Hello, and thank you for joining me. This is Tim Hanway, the Sports Performance Director here at Stack Velocity Norwood. Today's video tutorial is all about how to use the Stack Velocity Recovery Tracker, the latest tool that we have devised here to basically optimize performance as well as recovery. So, what is it and why is it important to you? Well, for those that have been training with us for some time, most of our athletes know that one of our favorite mantras as coaches is that we cannot improve what we cannot ultimately measure. So the easiest example of this is simply looking at a weight card. So most coaches, especially strength and conditioning coaches in this day and age, go to great lengths to, of course, design weight training programs. And most of these programs are, of course, written out and provide a means for athletes to record not only the data, but also just other variables that impact their lifts. So it's a great system because, again, it allows coaches and athletes alike to be able to track progress, see how the exercises are working, but most importantly, see the developments in strength. As coaches, we use this as a tool to basically decide when we push our athletes hard as well as when we ease right off. Because when we get that balance right, that's when we see improvements in fitness, strength levels, pretty much everything. And the technical term we call that is supercompensation. So we want supercompensation to exist. However, as most athletes are no doubt aware, that is just one piece of the puzzle. Because in this day and age, athletes don't just live in the weight room. They have to perform on the field. They have to compete in games. They have to compete in tournaments. So there is a lot of stuff that is going on that, of course, will affect performance that isn't necessarily tracked in the weight room. Hence the need for the Stack Velocity Recovery Tracker. So how does it work? Well, the Stack Velocity Recovery Tracker is a Google Sheet. So as a result of that, it is designed as an integrated platform through Google. So in order to even access it, an athlete must have a Gmail account. Now, most university email addresses are actually linked to Gmail. So at the time of recording, a majority of athletes that have a .edu address, as well as a university that uses the Google Drive, will have access. However, some athletes we find do not, so as a result, they may have to create a Gmail address. And again, it can be performed by simply going to google.com, following the prompts, and creating a Gmail account. So once that Gmail account is set and we receive your address, we will then add you to the list and you will receive an invitation via Gmail to basically join the Google Sheet, which again is the form that the Velocity Recovery Tracker takes. When you do receive that information, and I'll pull it up as an illustration, all you need to do is simply log on to Google. So even if you look at my own interface, and you will see kind of in this left-hand tab here, kind of these different items you can select. So the sheet will first appear in the shared with me, and all you need to do is literally click it and drag it into the Drive folder, and then you will have full access to the Stack Velocity Recovery Tracker. So I'm going to walk you through each of the tabs and basically how this tool works, because you'll see that we designed it with simplicity in mind. So before I even do that, what I want to make clear is that there's actually two parts to the Stack Velocity Recovery Tracker. The tracker itself, which is this Google Sheet, as well as the accompanying Word document questionnaire. So, athletes will also be receiving a copy of this Velocity Athlete Self-Report Questionnaire, because it's basically the answers of the questions that we ask here that are ultimately plugged into the tracker here. So let's actually look at the questions. So the self-report questionnaire is to be answered on a daily basis by you, the athlete. So it is a simple 5-point questionnaire with a sliding scale. And each question pertains to a particular aspect of recovery that we as coaches want to know about. So for instance, the first question is all about energy levels. How energized do you feel? One of the big signs of overtraining or under recovery is athletes that feel lethargic. So we want athletes to rate on a scale of 1 to 5 how their overall energy levels are. The next is quality of sleep. So as you can imagine, this question will have a direct impact on this question. But sleep is probably by and large the most underutilized recovery tool. So we want to ensure that our athletes are getting adequate and deep restful sleep. Third one is a little bit more cognitive. It's how is your motivation to train? How ready do you feel to go? Again, answering that question on that 1 to 5 sliding scale. Muscle soreness. Just with the sheer amount of work being done in the weight room, on the field, the conditions of muscles are huge. So again, likewise, filling out this questionnaire, giving yourself a numeric value. And then finally, trying to rate your concentration. How ready do you go? How ready, do you feel ready to go that day? How concentrated are you? So as you can imagine, all these questions are somewhat interrelated. But again, we designed this with ease in mind. We want it to be a simple, easy to administer questionnaire. So where do you actually put the values for each one of these questions? Well, this is where we actually go back to the tool itself. So the way it works is it's broken up into 3 separate tabs. And the first tab is what we call the recovery overview. So every athlete has their name listed and is basically assigned a row of boxes. So as you recall, each one of those questions was scaled from 1 to 5. So let's just say this athlete here, on the energy question, she gave herself a 3. Maybe the sleep question, she gave herself a 4. Motivation, she gave herself a 4. Muscles, a 3. And concentration, a 5. So what happens is you get a summation of these scores. We also have kind of a bar graph, so you can kind of get an idea of kind of where you stand. So each athlete has their own kind of corresponding bar graph, so to speak. It also gives you kind of a daily or weekly average of kind of all of these things. So effectively, each athlete would spend the day filling out their questionnaire, and they would then create it in this shared document. So the beauty, again, for those that are not familiarized with Google Sheets, is that everybody has access to the same sheet. So you can have people inputting their data at the same time, which again allows the sheet itself to be a central hub for all information. So even if I just fictitiously put some more scores in, again, we can see kind of how this sheet kind of comes together and how we get some averages. Now what's interesting too is you may have noticed just in having to play around that each time I added a number or I completed the questionnaire, a color would come up in addition to an actual summation of scores. So this is actually designed as a traffic light system. So we know anything that's green is optimal, anything that's amber is something that we want to monitor, and if for whatever reason there's a red, that's something that we as coaches and practitioners of course want to take a deeper look at. The most important thing is a policy of honesty, and I'll get into that a little bit more deeply towards the end of this presentation. But for this tool to fully work, athletes need to be as open and as honest as they can. But like I said, I will get into that in a little bit. So once we have effectively kind of added these scores, you simply take the score that you got and you just simply add, or put the sum here. So for instance, Bailey got a score of 19, it looks like. So what I'm going to have her do is she is going to put 19 in this box. Whereas Becky got a 17. So Becky's going to put 17 in this box. And you'll notice that each one of these columns corresponds to a date. So this is Monday, April 4th. This is Tuesday the 5th, Wednesday the 6th, etc. And when we design the sheet, we do it so that the entire season is basically documented, or a specific period of time. Now, if I go back to this overview sheet, you're going to notice too that we start to actually get some averages per category. So if I just went off of the average for my energy, we see that the group got 3.5 here. 3.5 for the sleep, 4.5 for the motivation. So each day, the captain of the team, or one of the captains, is to actually input these values. So that is who is assigned the task. Because what we want to do is we want to actually catalog the average for energy, for sleep, because this allows us as coaches to basically discover trends as they appear. Is the team feeling under-energized? Is the quality of sleep going down? Are people feeling motivated? Is muscle soreness too high? Again, this is just more facts that arm us as coaches and practitioners to do the best job possible in supporting the team. So, step one, on a daily basis, this is to be filled out by each member of the team. And we usually say by 10 p.m. of that day at the latest. So by 10 p.m., this entire sheet is to be filled out. So the questionnaire fully submitted by every member of the team. Okay, and that is going to, again, allow us to get the most accurate, up-to-date information. That athlete then puts their sum score next to their name underneath the column that corresponds to the day's date. So, step one is we have used the questionnaire with our sheet. So again, let me just bring that questionnaire back, just so everybody knows what I'm talking about. So we use this questionnaire with the first two tabs of this sheet. The final tab is what we call training monotony and training strain. So for anybody who's, I guess, a bit of a geek like me, we actually derived this from a research paper that was created by Carl Foster and colleagues in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research in 2001. And what Dr. Foster discovered through kind of analyzing a multitude of different data points was that when it came to predicting injury risk, high degrees of training monotony coupled with training strain was one of the leading causations of injury. But what is training monotony? When we think monotony, we usually think something that's really boring and monotonous. Monotony, when it comes to training or sports performance, simply deals with training loads. So in other words, is every day, if we look at a typical 7-day week, is every day a hard day? Is every day a medium day? Because if we get the same type of load, so for instance, a classic example of a monotonous training week would be someone that goes out and runs a mile a day every day. Well, we know, kind of through conventional sports science wisdom, that if you want to get better at the mile, that might not be the best way. There may be days where you need to run more than a mile. There may be days where you need to run less than a mile, but at a much faster speed. And that tends to be a much more effective way of improving performance. So training monotony is just a very fancy way of saying there's variations in loads. There's harder days, there's easier days, there's medium days. We need to make sure a typical session is broken up, or a typical week, is broken up in a fashion similar as that. And again, those that have been weight training with us, they see the same principle reflected in the weight training program. There's usually a deload week at one point where those weights go down so that we can make those weights even heavier after that deload week has occurred. So how does one categorize training monotony? Well, that's easy. So what you need to do is you need to, on a scale of 1 to 10, fill out your rate of perceived exertion for a particular session. So if I scroll down, you can see kind of this scale here. So again, 1, it goes from 0 to 10. So 0 is pretty much a rest. You haven't done anything. So if you had a day off, you put a 0. 1 is very, very easy, all the way up to 10, which is maximal. So again, this is something you could practically do in your sleep. This something on the other end of the continuum is like your life depended on it. So let's say, fictitiously, that there was a practice, there was an hour-long practice, so duration minutes, that would be 60. And let's just say this athlete rated that practice, how difficult that practice was on a scale of 1 to 10. Let's say they gave it a 7. Well, that gives me a training load of 420. That's it. That's all you need to do as an athlete, is you just simply need to put the duration of a session in minutes, so how long a practice was, and you just need to scale that on a score of 1 to 10. However, one thing that needs to be noted is that there may be times where an athlete has more than one practice in a day or more than one event. So for instance, maybe they are in a situation where they practice in the afternoon and they have a lift in the evening. What you would then do is you would add the total amount of minutes for your sessions for the day, and you would take the average of your rate of perceived exertion. So here's a classic example. Let's just say, for instance, we had an hour and a half practice that was rated a 5 out of 10. So that's 90 minutes. Let's just put that down. Okay, so that's 90 minutes. And they rated it 5 out of 10. Okay, easy enough. All right, let's say they then had a lift that evening. So that's another hour or another 60 minutes. So 90 plus 60, 150. So that's a total of 150 hours. Okay, they felt that that was a 7. All right, so we just take the average of 7 and 5. So just to recap, that average, of course, would be a 6. So for the total day's event, they had 150 minutes worth of activity, which includes, again, a 90 minutes practice plus a 60-minute weight session. And then we just took the average of those two RPEs and placed it here, which gives me a total training load of about 900. This number here is for coaches' use, so athletes don't necessarily need to worry about that. But what it allows us to do collectively is start getting an idea of how a practice is, of how hard a practice is, because again, that is going to have an impact on how strength and conditioning coaches push athletes in the weight room. But that is also then going to provide invaluable feedback to both strength and conditioning coaches and head coaches so that we can ensure that athletes are getting the right type of training structure. They're being pushed hard when they need to be, and we're easing right off when we also need to be as well. So similar to the other tabs, you'll notice that each kind of day has a date, and then it has the corresponding 3 boxes. And that is it. That is all you as an athlete has to do, is on a daily basis fill this out. So let's just say, again, if I use Bailey as my athlete here, so this was Monday. Tuesday, they just have a practice. It's a walkthrough, so it was another 60 minutes, but this time it was simply a 4. And you'll notice the formulas that have been built in will do the work for you. And we'll even start to be able to generate, if I scroll all the way across, some averages and some numbers that, again, are for us as coaches to help analyze trends. So in summary, in order to fill this out, and this takes probably 5 minutes at the most, each athlete is to simply open up the recovery questionnaire, which is a Word document, again, a 5-point questionnaire. They are to answer these questions to the best of their ability after a session. They are to input that answer here on the recovery overview. Again, each column corresponds to a question. Okay. They're to put the summary or the sum of their scores in the column that corresponds to the correct date. And then they are to give themselves a training monotony and strain score. So again, this is simply multiplying the total amount of duration in minutes of training activity. So that includes on-field and weight room activity, as well as just providing on a scale of 1 to 10 how hard they felt the day was. So, in summary, it's an easy-to-use tool, and once everything is filled, and as we said, we want scores submitted by 10 p.m., what would simply happen is that the next day, an athlete would delete all of their scores. So we delete all of the scores, and whoever gets to this sheet first just needs to put the new date. So let's just say this is the Tuesday, so they just simply put 4-5. And then you just simply delete your old scores and put your new scores so that we get real-time feedback and we are able to, over a period of time, document relationships between practice, training, and competition. Now, in tying this up, there are just a few points that need to be understood. Again, everybody needs to have buy-in. Everybody needs to fill out this sheet by 10 p.m. of the training day for it to be accurate and provide real-time feedback. It is up to the captain of the team to take the averages for each one of these. Oops, got a little error there. It is up to the captain of each team to take the averages and actually place them where they should be in these cells corresponding to each date. Okay. And as also mentioned, it is about just getting consistency. Now, the one thing I want to make crystal clear, For this system to work, athletes need to answer these questions as open and honestly as possible. So this is going back to that point that I mentioned earlier. So one of the biggest fears that athletes have, of course, is that if they answer these questions and they are under recovering, or maybe they're getting yellows and reds here, that somehow that is a reflection on them as an athlete, or that they look weaker compared to their teammates. That could not be further from the truth. So what, again, I want to make 100% crystal clear is that in no way, shape, or form is this tool meant to try to describe or ascribe toughness to an athlete. It's not going to be in any way, shape, or form used for selection purposes. So a head coach isn't going to hold this over your head. This is providing the most true and honest feedback you can. Because if an athlete is under recovering, their likelihood of injury goes up substantially. So rather than worry about how they look compared to their teammates, if they're out with a torn muscle, that's going to be even worse. So again, this is a judgment-free zone. This is about providing as much information, because when we see these relationships, we as sports performance coaches can then provide further insight. So if an athlete isn't getting the sleep on a regular basis, we can steer them in that direction. If muscle soreness is really becoming an issue, we again can provide more individualized approaches to reduce that. So again, that in so many words is a Stack Velocity Recovery Tracker. If there are any questions, you can email me directly at tim.hanway@velocitysp.com. I'd be happy to answer them. But like we said, this tool is for you. It's all about putting athletes first. Anyway, thanks for your patience. Thanks for your time. I hope you enjoy the tool, and we look forward as a coaching team to providing you with the best possible service. Have a great day.